Hi. So here we are with the first essay of the semester, the Middle Ages essay prompt. Okay. Make sure, of course, to follow these instructions very carefully. Think about the questions. Choose one of the following topics. Okay. So again, just pick one of these. And construct an argumentative essay based on research and your own close reading of the primary text. Primary text means if you're writing about Beowulf, Beowulf is the primary text, right? That sort of thing. So the first question, how does the Beowulf poet, who is a Christian, reconcile the contradictions of values and beliefs of Christianity with the values and beliefs of the pagan characters in the story? Consider whether you find the reconciliation successful or not. This question will require research into both pagan beliefs and Christianity as practiced in the time of the poet. So in other words, you have this story that we have today from a Christian poet writer who is the only person that we have who wrote this down. But he is writing, in all likelihood, hundreds of years after this story was first told. And of course, people tend to modify, right, especially in an oral tradition. And as such, the main characters, Beowulf, right, and all his buds, are really not Christian. And yet, Beowulf is the hero. And so the Christian poet, putting Beowulf at the center of the poem, right, as a hero, has to reconcile certain kind of problems, right? Beowulf is not a Christian. From the perspective of a Christian, and particularly Christian writer of this time, that means that Beowulf is damned. And yet at the same time, right, Beowulf is the hero. And there are values that he exhibits that are clearly admirable. So you have a really interesting dynamic that's going on in this poem. And so this first question would ask you to really look at them more deeply and carefully. Second question. In the general prologue of Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, the poet brings together a wide-ranging group of pilgrims. Select at least 3 of the pilgrims and argue how Chaucer uses them for the purposes of a state's satire, a term found in the Norton Anthology, Volume A, on page 261. So we have a wide range of pilgrims, okay? And in fact, the editors of the Norton Anthology talk about the reality that this is a very unlikely group. Actually, most of these people would not be hanging together. But for Chaucer's purposes, he does have them together. And they come from a lot of different stations of life. Some are secular, some are religious. Some are higher class, some are working class. Some are men, some are women, right? So how does this work? And how does Chaucer use them for the purposes of a state's satire? Right, looking at the different the different things that make up the world of the late 14th century: nobility, church, peasants, a growing kind of skilled class of people, right? In other words, trades people who are making perhaps more money than in previous times. And it's all kind of a little spoofed, right? Satire, kind of, he's poking a little fun at them. So you can look at that. The third question, is the wife of Bath a feminist or anti-feminist character? Do not fall into the intentional fallacy. It does not matter what Chaucer intended. It matters what he wrote. Okay. So in other words, as you look at that character of the wife of Bath, and she is a phenomenal character. How do you see her ultimately? Right? I mean, do you see her as a powerful woman who is admirable? Do you see her as somebody who is not admirable, basically? Somebody who is not evil, but reckless and not really to be admired, right? I mean, that kind of think of it in those terms. Do we admire her? Do we not admire her? That sort of thing. The wife of Bath has been looked at for a very, very long time, right? She is, as I said, one of the more interesting characters, quite honestly, in English literature, not just simply our semester and not just simply by Chaucer. Right? She's remarkable. Right? So take a look at her. The fourth question that you might choose is, how is Sir Gawain in the Green Knight a critique of the courtly and chivalric values that were already on the decline in the late 14th century? You may wish to use comparisons with other Arthurian tales, but if you do, be sure they're from an earlier date. Right? No point in talking about stuff that happened afterwards. Right? In other words, there's a lot of dynamics going on in this poem, the Green Knight poem. But one of the things and the whole purpose in many ways of the Green Knight is to test Arthur's court, to test Sir Gawain in particular. And it's the nature of the test and the approach to this that I want you to look at. You will be most successful, of course, if you, first of all, define those values. What was chivalry? What were the values of the court? What did Arthur represent, in other words? And then, how does this, quite frankly, very sophisticated poem, how does this deal with that? Right? How does it approach it, and what does it have to say about those things? Right? As I said, it's a sophisticated and complex poem, so a good essay will be sophisticated and complex in its answer. The paper is due to be submitted to Canvas by Monday, September 19th, 11:59 p.m. Be sure to follow the out-of-class essay guidelines for matters of form and style. Right? That guideline sheet is, of course, posted on the Canvas website. Right? Look it up under modules, under the handouts. There is a brief video that accompanies it. It's not nearly as good as my lecture in class, but hey, we do what we do. Use correct MLA documentation as described in the MLA for Literature class handout and the current MLA handbook if you happen to have it. There is also another MLA format sheet also available to you with video in the handout section on Canvas also. Be sure to include a word count at the end of your essay. Remember, you must meet minimum requirements, including word count, sources, and subject matter. No late essays will be accepted. Oh, this is not the end of the semester. Well, that happens when you take a template. Huh? I apologize for that. We'll get rid of that later. Minimum requirements are going to be 1,000 to 1,400 words approximately. Right, that squiggly line means you can consider that just sort of an approximate level. If you go above that, don't freak out. But I'm not looking for 3,000 word essays, although some students have written them because they got sufficiently motivated. Now, it's important that you have citations from at least 4 different sources. Now, one of the sources must be the primary text. So it's Gawain, or it's Beowulf, or it's Chaucer. 2 sources at least must be from scholarly works, such as dissertations, peer-reviewed journal articles, or university press books. If you don't know how to get those, you can, of course, get them through the Mesa College Library. Right, our databases, including JSTOR and EBSCOhost, have peer-reviewed materials. University press books can be found in our library. They're also available, many of them, in ebook format. The fourth source can be a source of your own choosing, but it must be a credible analytical source in its own right. And yeah, authority matters. So in other words, if you get some lazy, pop cultural, text source that you're using, that may not be valuable in terms of, proving your case in this essay, right? All things considered. The textbook counts as one source, even though you may certainly use editorial materials in your essay. So you can use, of course, the words that the editors, that Greenblatt and the others have put together for you, but that doesn't boost your source count, okay? Now, you may have more than these 4 sources, right? That's always true. You can always have more. That's why we have the word minimum, not maximum, right? If you need more, you find more, use more. And again, please remember MLA format and presentation and documentation, including correct works cited. Okay? Good luck.